Welcome to Recruiters Get Real, the only place where real IT recruiters answer real career questions asked by real tech professionals. I'm your host, Matty BV3, and it's about to get real. So I'm sitting here today with our Vice President, Mr. Jay Johnson. I'm going to throw a question at you that comes off of the Reddit forum CS Career Questions from user Tyler Slemke. The question is around imposter syndrome. So the scenario that this person gives is that a friend of theirs was a recent computer science grad. It was their first job as a developer, and after a short period of time, they were laid off. Before being laid off, they really hadn't had any performance discussions, or so he or she was laid off without knowing why, not knowing what to change or what to develop, etc. So that person has two questions. One is, how can a developer, especially a newer developer, objectively analyze or look at their skills compared to everyone else around them? And the second question that they have is, what recommendations do you have for someone to overcome imposter syndrome or overcome that idea or belief that everyone else around you knows more than you do, and I don't belong in this role because everyone else seems smarter. In reality, they're all looking at Stack Overflow as much as you are, but it sometimes feels like that. So how can you objectively measure, and how can you overcome that syndrome?
Right. So I think what really needs to happen is project-based and team-based, right? So everyone really has a particular position or a skill normally that project or team would need, okay, right? To me, as important, you've got to be able to continue to hone your skills, right? You've got to continue to be relevant, for lack of a better term, right? You're there, you're hired. But you always got to remember that managers put together teams, not necessarily today, on what skills are. It goes much deeper than that today. And I think therein lies some of the questions that a lot of folks have, right? It's not the skill that I bring. I think that anybody who is in computer sciences, normally if they're hired into a position, they have a skill, which means they can be taught or they can learn, right? And I think what we're seeing today much more is that a lot of folks, they come into a position, right? And the skill I believe that they're going to need to use is something ultimately that if they don't know, they can learn. And I think a lot of managers today don't necessarily hire on skill. Now, if you're talking about someone who's coming in at a lead or an architect, obviously
that's a completely different story, right?
But when we're talking about a junior or someone with a couple years experience going into especially big enterprise companies, that's the other thing people need to realize. When it's beyond that, it's communication. It's all kinds of things that aren't necessarily how do I code. Again, anybody can be taught how to code if they're willing to be taught, right? So I think that's an important thing that people need to realize. Managers put together teams that are very eclectic. And again, it's not necessarily about the skill the person has. It's about how does the person fit in with the team, right? How is their communication? How will they be able to adapt and work with the other people that are there? Again, can't stress it enough. 9 out of 10 times a skill or a deficit can be taught within a week. You're not going to be an expert, right? You're going to know enough and you're going to be able to get by. And the reality is that even tenured developers, we all know where to get the information if we can't get it, right? And that's what I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in. Again, imposter, right? That guy's better than I am, or how do I measure up to that person? If you know where to go to get the information, right, you're going to be fine. You're going to be able to survive through that, right? And I think it's the willingness to learn is probably the most important piece to that.
So, and I think that kind of answers the question I was about to ask, but would it be safe to say in Tyler's case, what Tyler is asking, how can they objectively measure their ability to other developers? I guess the answer, correct me if I'm wrong, but the answer in summary would be don't. Don't try to objectively measure your skill against other developers. but more be introspective in regards to, are you open and willing to learn? Are you able to collaborate? Are you able to communicate? And those kinds of things.
All of the above without question. And I think to answer that too, successfully, we live in a world, right, that we always try and we want to be better than we are, or we don't want to admit that we're good at what we do, right? So that's just kind of a thing that I think we're all taught, unfortunately, from an early age today.
Being humble is a value. Don't brag.
And my theory on that always is, and it may sound odd, but I've always thought that you want to fly just right under the radar, right? You want to do your job. You want to do it well. You want to poke your hand through the radar screen every once in a while to let everybody know you're there. And that's how you stay relevant. If you keep your head above the radar, right, and keep poking the bear, you're going to need to live up to the reality of what that is as well, too. And not that that's a bad thing, right? But I think then you put undue pressure upon yourself. I would say without question, where you're saying, how do I compare myself to A or B, right? Mm-hmm. I think that from the development side of IT today, the most important thing that anybody can do is you want to stay relevant. And staying relevant, right, is doing all those things to continue learning, right? So if you're a Java developer, right, and let's just take it real simple, and you're the best Java guy out there with Java and JavaScript, technology changes almost every day, it seems like. I mean, we get requisitions, right, and we get a requisition that's got a new form of Java, or and we sit there and look at one another, and some of us have been doing this for 20 years, and we go, well, what is that, right? We need to, we not only do we need to, but we know where to go to get that information, right? So that's my point, is you need to stay relevant. So continue your education, whether that's online, whether that's working with the guy sitting next to you, right? And I also feel that, you feed off the people that are around you.
Sure.
And I would hope, that they're all going to do the same thing that you are, and they're going to give you back what you're looking to get back at the same time too. And that's really helping one another. That's what team is all about, right, when we're talking about projects. But don't ever stop learning. I liken that, as I said, you need to be a sponge. A sponge continues to absorb. So just take it from wherever it's coming from and just continue learning.
And that's a great suggestion, not only for an individual's career, but that'll in turn also help internally if you do have that imposter syndrome, or you do have that feeling. The more knowledgeable you become about whether it's a particular topic that you're currently working on, or something else that you're interested in. Maybe you're coding in Java, but you're interested in Python,
right,
and you're learning that kind of on the side or additionally. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's going to help your confidence, and the more that you know, the more confident you'll become. So continue your learning as much as you can on your own time. All the information is readily available, right? Is there anything you can't learn for free online?
No, there isn't. Yeah. And that's the point. It's all there, and it's all for the asking. You may have to ask the question a little differently a couple times to get what you want, but it's there. There's no problem with that.
Great.
Perfect.
Great. So, Tyler, hopefully that answers your questions or your friends' questions from the scenario. Hopefully it gives you some assistance in overcoming imposter syndrome and helps you learn or think maybe a little bit differently, and not necessarily try to compare yourself to other developers in terms of what skills you have, but more look at how you're communicating, collaborating, etc. Does that summarize? Can I summarize pretty well?
It does. It does.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Jay, for your time.
Thank you. Take care.